My name is Ricardo Madrano. I am 26 years old. I am currently a resident of Lansing, Michigan. I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I was a Marine Corps brat. My father was a Marine. I was born on base. Growing up, I bounced around a lot, did a lot of traveling due to the fact that my dad was in the Marines. So I lived in North Carolina, Cobana Seca, Virginia, DC area, Puerto Rico, California, Michigan. So my childhood, I kind of bounced around a lot every year. So every year I went to a new school. Both my parents were together, so I had a pretty normal like middle class life growing up. I moved to Michigan when I was about 13 years old, in which case my parents separated,
Divorce,
and
the
I lived with
greatest
my
and
mom
most
for
frequent
a few
damage
years.
to the family, breaks apart the very foundation of society, the traditional married and present family. Every day, American schools are filled by students from various backgrounds. Racial and cultural differences are the most obvious, but differences in family presence have large impacts on the future student. Our research has shown that the Catholic viewpoint on marriage and the family is not only morally founded, but also beneficial to the upbringing of new members in the community. In this short film, we will expound upon the Church's teaching of the family, cover the real world issues that may result from the damages to it, and discuss the moral understanding of a family along with its importance to society. The Church's position on the good of the traditional family can be summed up in this short passage. Marriage is not merely a private institution, it is the foundation of the family, where children learn values and virtues that make them good Christians as well as good citizens. Marriage is important for the upbringing of the next generation, and therefore it is important for society. To get a more living, breathing understanding of this issue, we've gone to Bishop Earl Boye to better explain the traditional teaching of the Church and how they are based in the Catholic idea of natural law and natural order.
This is the way God has created us. And so, whatever the way God has created us, that's what's so important, not just for the church, but I think for society in general. God has created us male and female for the purpose of, you know, propagating and filling the earth. I mean, that was the whole purpose, and creating children who would then come to worship God as their creator. So it all has to do with creation, it seems to me, and that's the fundamental society is the family. So and for the church, we call it the domestic church. So I think that's the real foundation is the fact of creation. This is the way God has made
No matter
us.
what, do you think the family has any real importance on instilling like Catholic beliefs on their children, or do you think they would just grow up like that anyway?
Well, I think the Catholic beliefs for what is a good human being are the same things that would be for someone who's not a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
How do you remain faithful to someone and to the promises you have made? How do you love another human being? How do you come to your full potential? Those are all things that are nurtured in a family if the family is functioning correctly and as God has created it. So I don't see a distinction here between what the church wants and what society really wants and needs.
And true to the bishop's word, we have found that among most members of society, apart from the church, a common set of values that coincides with those
Yeah,
of the church.
what are the values that you really believe that your child should take away
That
from
I would
you?
want to instill in
Yeah.
my child, that was instilled upon me.
Yeah.
Just the whole honor, courage, commitment. I mean, the whole idea of you know honoring yourself and your relatives and your neighbors, and being true to your word, being honest, and showing compassion and love towards other people.
If the values are so similar, what does the family really have to instill? One aspect is they must provide a good example.
Okay.
The two issues are fidelity and permanence. Every child needs to see what fidelity means between their parents and what permanence means, not only for their own livelihood, but also in the parents, so that they too can make those kind of commitments. I think we're running into a society which is unable to make commitments about anything. And I think it's because we've lost that sense of permanence and fidelity. Now, those take work. Those don't just happen. It takes a commitment and an effort, daily effort people have to make in order to remain faithful to one another, to forgive one another, and to keep a permanent relationship going. No society can survive without those two values. They just can't. Whether it's Catholic or whatever, you can't survive without those two values.
To understand the importance of these values, a survey of the Lansing Catholic student body was performed. Here we have laid out three major categories. The first graphs represent the differences in the relationship among kids and those around them. The significant difference is that children from divorced families prefer to talk with their siblings over their parents about sensitive issues. This is one of the few key pieces of information that leads to the assumption that married parents have a much greater influence on their children. But what does this influence do? In the next survey, the graphs show that the children of married families are more likely to take honors classes, and furthermore, they are more likely to play high school sports. This data confirms that the traditional family produces better members of the community by proving that the greater influence and example of married parents leads children to be more involved socially and academically. As a person who has been raised through a divorced family, do you think that an intact family has a substantial influence on the
To answer your
child?
second question, absolutely. I think the family and home life definitely has some kind of impact, whether it be small or large, on an individual, especially an individual that's in high school or around that age where their surroundings are, impact them a great deal and influence, their actual character. As far as the family being involved or not being there, I mean, I guess it's up to the individual. I would say like a strong family support or a strong like safety net system, if it's set up, then it's totally beneficiary. It can really help people, try to reach goals they never thought they would try to reach because they do have a safety net and they do have people there to support them.
We talk about the things that break families, like divorce and other issues like that.
Okay.
But you yourself, being in the military before, do you think that people in the military have a difficult time carrying on a family as would anyone else, just for the fact that they're gone for multiple periods of time?
I mean, it really depends on the person's occupation in the military. A lot of occupations in the military, the member that's in the military of that family doesn't actually deploy, so they're actually not gone any longer than they would be a normal family. Other jobs, they do deploy, so they could be gone anywhere from 7 months to a year. Do I think military families, are we asking if military families are stronger,
or do you
like just more acceptable to divorce and stuff like that? I think it could happen. Yeah, definitely. The military, especially in the enlisted military, puts a great deal of stress on individuals and on the family as well. Especially being if one of the members of the family is deployed, then usually it's the male. Raising the family is usually left up to the mother. If you have multiple kids, I mean, that can be very, very stressful. So yeah, I mean, I think that being in the military definitely puts a great deal of stress on families. However, there is a lot of beneficiary sides to it as far as financially being stable. In the military, if you're married and you have children, you get a different rate of pay opposed to if you weren't married. So there is that financial stability there, and there's a lot of support assets too that are available as far as like daycare is free and stuff like that, that people that aren't in the military don't have exposure to, which could lead them to, having a family that falls apart and or leads to divorce.
The information given by Ricardo is promising. Many of his deep-held beliefs are that of which parents try to instill in their children, but that doesn't mean his life has been without the difficulties associated with divorce. Ricardo dropped out of high school and has developed some personality traits that have limited his ability to work and handle stress. But this is nothing to give up on. People are imperfect and have flaws, but with an assessment of oneself, these problems can be solved by always reaching to bring society back to making the traditional family a priority. As Bishop Boyer said, people will make mistakes, but we always have to try to heal the harm that we have done. Although Ricardo is now an unmarried father, he may very well be the first step in returning his family to stability through the parenting of his newly born child. Just because someone is from an unconventional family does not mean they are a waste. It means that at some point an unideal situation has come about that needs to be addressed and not promoted. There are many unconventional family situations that we were not able to discuss in detail that range from single parenthood to the families with absent working parents. But the bottom line is that the most consistent way of teaching a child society's important values is through the loving upbringing of the traditional family.